What if surviving today actually required trading your smartphone for a rotary phone, or expanding your heater for a coal furnace? Sounds ridiculous? Well, here's a real question. Could you make it through 1 week with only the tech and tools from the 1960s? If you said yes, then you have to see these amazing nostalgic items from back in 1960. Ever wondered how people survived without smartphones? Have you ever thought about telling your grandmother you can't live without Instagram, and then she starts laughing so hard her teeth almost fall out? In a world where we get tensed when our phone battery drops below 20%, it's almost impossible to imagine life without fast communication. But here's the thing. People didn't just survive, but they built an entire civilization without ever needing to worry about their screen time. What was their secret? Imagine you're trying to call your crush. Your palms are sweaty, and you have to physically spin a wheel more than 7 times just to make a call. The rotary phone wasn't just a communication device, but it was also a test of patience, finger strength, and emotional capability. Each number you dialed was like a tiny success lap, accompanied by that zip 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 sound that today's kids would probably mistake for a sound tone from a vintage video game. And don't you dare mess up while rolling the digits, because if you do, well, grab a snack and get comfortable because you're going to be starting all over again. No backspace, no delete, just mere consequences for your actions. And let's not even talk about the busy signals. Today's kids would be traumatized by not being connected to someone immediately. But here's what made these clunky devices special. They taught us valuable life lessons. Patience? Check. Accuracy? Double check. Memory skills? Triple check if you could say. Nobody was carrying around a phone book, so you either had those important numbers memorized or you weren't calling anybody. Your brain was your contact list, and phone memory full was not an excuse. The most ironic part, people actually had real conversations back then. Without screens to stare at or notifications to disturb them, they were in this ancient practice called listening and responding. Interesting stuff, right? When someone called, you had no idea who it was because, of course, there was no caller ID. So you just had to use the other ancient skill called being polite to everyone. And one more perk, these phones were built like tanks. Drop your iPhone waist height, you're looking at a $200 bill. Drop your rotary phone down, and you're looking at a dent in your floor. Watching TV in black and white must have been pretty hard, right? Everything looks like an old photograph, and then suddenly, bam! The world explodes into a bright color. That's exactly what happened in the 1960s when color TVs took over America's living rooms completely. Sure, color TVs existed in the 1950s, but they were super expensive, just like buying a small car. By the 60s, prices went down and suddenly everybody wanted one. Shows like Bonanza became huge hits partly because they showed off those gorgeous desert sunsets in full bright color. The cowboys even wore brightly colored shirts just to impress the viewers. Walt Disney's Wonderful World of Color was exactly what it sounded like, a show that practically screamed, "Hey, look how amazing color TV is." The NBC Peacock logo would spread its colorful feathers before shows, reminding everyone that they were about to watch something really special. Parents would drag neighbors over just to show off the new color TV, and kids would sit extra close, amazed that cartoon characters were no longer gray. Even the news became more interesting. You could finally see what color tie the anchor was actually wearing. But this wasn't just about better TV. It was like getting a window to a more vibrant world right in your living room. Before centralized heating systems made us warm, there was the coal furnace, the heavyweight of home heating. Imagine waking up at 5 a.m. not to check your social media likes, but instead, the reason why your house was turning into an ice cube. The coal furnace didn't care about your sleep routine or your lazy Sunday plans. It demanded attention like a 5-year-old with a sugar rush. These octopus furnaces got their nickname from the multiple arm ducts reaching into various rooms, looking like some kind of mechanical monster from a sci-fi movie. But don't let the cool nickname fool you, because maintaining one was about as fun as doing tax returns manually. You would descend into your basement, which always had that one scary corner, to shovel coal into what essentially looked like a metal dragon's mouth. The process was an art form. Not enough coal? Welcome to the Ice Age. Too much coal? Congratulations, you've just recreated the sun's surface in your living room. And the ash. Ooh, the ash. It was everywhere. In your hair, under your nails, probably in your breakfast. Modern clean freaks would need therapy after 1 day of a coal furnace. Plus, nobody needed a gym membership. Between carrying coal buckets and shoveling ash, you had a full body workout before breakfast. Did you know that before Control Copy and Control Paste became our best friends, people had a love-hate relationship with something that turned their fingers black and their white shirts into polka dot disasters? Carbon paper was like the office ninja of that time. It did its job silently, but left evidence all over. If you're trying to make copies of an important document, you'd go for a print and watch your wireless printer do all its magic across the room. In the 1960s, you'd engage in what was only described as a document sandwich making contest. The first layer was your original document, the second layer was the carbon paper, and the third layer was the blank paper that would receive the copy. Then came the fun part, which was typing or writing with the pressure of a safecracker. Too light, and your copy would be a ghost of what it should be, and if it was too heavy, you'd end up with letters that were way too bold. The irony of it all? Despite all of its messiness, carbon paper was a revolutionary discovery for its time. It normalized document copying when the alternative was handwriting everything multiple times. Business people, secretaries, and students all relied on this messy but miracle worker. It was like having a printer that never needed electricity or toner, but just a steady hand and a willingness to look like you'd been fingerprinted at the police station. Next up, meet the lava lamp, the trippiest invention of 1963, and the ultimate 60s mood maker. A tall glass tube filled with colored liquid where blocks of wax floated up and down like lazy jellyfish in a psychedelic sea. These fascinating lamps worked like magic. Plug them in, wait about 20 minutes, and watch the show begin. The heat from the bulb would warm up the wax, making it rise and fall endlessly in different patterns. No two lava lamps ever moved exactly the same way, as it was like having your own light show. People would spend hours just watching these things, thinking that it helped them chill out or maybe even get inspired. But what made them extra special? They weren't just lights, but they were actually conversational pieces. You put one in your room and suddenly you're the coolest kid on the block. Even today, people love lava lamps, proving that some kinds of groovy are just never going to go out of style. What's the connection between a forgotten art form, a paper plane, and getting hopelessly lost? If you guess trying to fold a map back into its original state, you've probably been traumatized through the pre-GPS era. Gen Z would have a problem if their phone's navigation stopped working. Back then, paper maps were the original open-world game, except you couldn't respawn if you took a wrong turn. The real fun began when you had to read these paper puzzles. North had to be up, those small, bold, thick lines, those were roads or rivers or possibly the coffee spilled last time when you tried to navigate. And that blue dot showing "you are here"? Yeah, that never existed. You had to figure out where here was by using various landmarks, which was great until you realized every gas station looked the same. And let's not forget the compass, that magical device that always pointed north unless you were near something metal, which in a car was everywhere. It was like having a moral compass that only worked if you weren't tempted by anyone or anything. And the best part, when you finally admitted defeat and asked for directions, you get something like turn left where Johnson's barn used to be, because everyone was expected to have detailed knowledge of local bakeries' histories. Before Netflix and chill, there was radio and sit still. The vacuum tube radio wasn't just a device, but it was a furniture that made noise. These giants took up more space than your modern entertainment center, weighed as much as a small car, and took so long to heat up that you had to plan to listen to your schedule like a military operation. Here's the twist. The sound wasn't just sound, but it was an experience. The vacuum tubes gave off a warm, rich tone that made modern digital audio sound like it was trying too hard. Plus, they doubled as space heaters. On a cold winter night, you could gather around the radio for entertainment and prevent getting freezed at the same time. Talk about energy efficiency. You didn't just touch or switch and get instant gratification. You actually had to wait for those tubes to warm up, which created anticipation that modern instant-on devices probably have killed. The tubes would start glowing like tiny orange campfires, and the speaker would gradually come to life with a soft hum. And when something went wrong, you didn't call the tech team or check YouTube for tutorials. Instead, you would gently slap the side of the cabinet, wiggle the tubes, and perform what can only be described as a technical activity to fix it. Sometimes it worked, sometimes it didn't, but it always felt more satisfying than staring at a loading screen. What weighs as much as a small car, costs as much as one too, and kind of becomes outdated faster than your iPhone? Welcome to the world of encyclopedia sets. These knowledge bricks were the prime symbol of educated households, taking up entire walls and collecting a lot of information. But why did parents invest their hard-earned money in these giant blocks of paper? Trying to explain to a Gen Z kid that you couldn't just Google it, instead you had to get up from your chair, walk to the bookshelf, find the correct volume, and then actually read multiple paragraphs just to find one fact. It was like doing a CrossFit workout for your brain. These books weren't just sources of information, they were like a literal family of peacekeepers. Nothing settled a dinner table argument like someone marching in with volume 7 just to prove the facts right. Of course, by the time you found the right volume and page, everyone probably forgot what they were arguing about in the first place. Before oat, almond, soy, whatever milk existed, the milkman was sort of Santa Claus, but wasn't showing up for Christmas, but instead every single day to deliver milk to doorsteps. It was like having a dairy-based subscription service before subscription services were cool. The whole system ran like a well-structured machine. Empty bottles out at night, full bottles magically showed up in the morning. No apps, no text notifications, no sorry we missed you cards, just the reliable sound of glass bottles clinking in the morning, nature's alarm clock for the neighborhood. And talk about recycling. Those glass bottles were returned, washed, and reused long before eco-friendly became a marketing strategy. The milkman wasn't just a delivery person either, but he was also a neighborhood news network. He knew who was having parties, who was sick, and probably who was having an affair. He was like Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram combined into one person, but with actual human interaction and dairy products to boot. But the real magic was the milk itself. This was real milk, with cream that would rise to the top of the bottle. Making chocolate milk wasn't just stirring in some syrup, but it was an art form that required carefully mixing without disturbing the cream too much. And if you forgot to bring your milk bottles during summer, well, congratulations, you just invented yogurt. Why would anyone rather choose a washing machine that requires more energy from the user than from electricity? Gen Z complains about having to push a button and add a pod, but the Ringer washer machine was a WWE wrestling match between the owner and the owner's laundry. A washing machine that looks like a barrel with angry metal rollers on top. First, you'd fill it with water manually because apparently automation was still a sci-fi concept at the time. Then came the soap, followed by a dance with your dirty clothes as you push them around with a wooden stick. But the real fun began with the wringer part. That is, each piece of clothing had to be manually fed through two rollers that would squeeze out excess water. Sounds simple, right? Well, you're wrong. This was like playing Russian roulette with a few buttons. One wrong move, and those rollers would pop buttons off. And heaven help you if you accidentally caught your finger in there, and suddenly you'd understand why your grandmother had that signature twisted pinky. The process required strategic planning just like that of a mission. Sheets had to be folded just right unless you wanted them to come out looking like abstract art. Shirts needed careful alignment, or else you'd end up with permanent wrinkles. In the 1960s, a flashlight wasn't just a tool but a sign of dedication. These were serious pieces of equipment that could be handy as a home defense weapon or even a dumbbell for your morning workout. The batteries were equally impressive. None of these tiny AAA things, but we were talking about real batteries the size of small missiles, and they had the lifespan of a mayfly. The moment you needed a flashlight most, those batteries would decide to take a vacation. It was almost like they had a built-in sensor for emergencies. Oh, power outage? Perfect time to die. The beam of light wasn't so much a beam as it was just an illumination. It started bright yellow and then faded to orange and then to a brown and finally settled on a dim flicker that made candles look kind of like stadium floodlights. Storage was another thing. The rule back then was that the more important the flashlight, the harder it was to find. So you'd find a safe place during summer only to spend 3 hours hunting for it when the winter storm hit. And then when you finally found it, guaranteed those batteries had leaked, turning the internal circuitry into a science experiment with corrosion. Before cars came with climate control that could actually make your vehicle feel like a meat locker or a sauna with the push of a button, there were wing vents. These small triangular windows were a sign of low-tech brilliance. They were like having a personal wind tunnel director at your service. The physics behind them was beautiful in its simplicity. Open the main window, get hit in the face with the tornado. But if you open just the wing vent, create a perfect blow of air that would keep you cool while maintaining your carefully made hairstyle. It was like having a superpower that had the ability to control airflow with a tiny piece of glass. These vents required skill to master. Too wide of an angle and you'd get enough air to inflate a hot air balloon, but too narrow and you would create a whistle that would drive dogs crazy for miles. The best part, they were impossible to break. Modern cars have electronics that fail if you handle them wrongly, but wing vents, they were operated by good old-fashioned mechanical handles that would probably even survive a nuclear blast. The only maintenance required was occasionally hitting it with the WD-40 if it got a little too squeaky, and then there was duct tape for the liquid world. In the 1960s, if your floor didn't look like it needed a trim, were you even living? These carpets were a combination of comfort and questionable decisions. Let's talk about what made shag carpets the rock stars of flooring. The typical shag carpet had fibers reaching up to 2 inches in length, making them perfect for losing small pets, spare change, and your dignity all at once. But here's the fascinating part about shag carpets that most people don't know. They were actually inspired by the ancient Greek flakati rugs, which were hand-woven from goat hairs. The 60s version swapped goat hair for nylon or wool, probably because explaining to guests that your carpet came from a goat was a conversation nobody really wanted to have. And let's talk about the parties. These carpets were like having a built-in comfort zone. Kids would spend hours making carpet angels. Teenagers also loved it, and adults, well, let's just say that a lot of tea was spilled on those carpets, creating archaeological evidence of 60s dinner parties that future generations would rather not discover. Tick-tock. Now let's talk about winding watches. Before batteries came along, people had to wind their watches like little engines to keep in touch with time. Think of these watches as small machines you wear on your wrist. Inside every single one was a spring that works just like a rolled up rubber band. When you turn the little knob on the side of the watch, you're tightening the spring. As the spring slowly unwinds throughout the day, it makes gears move the hands around the watch face. These watches were like small pets that needed daily attention. Skip your winding routine and your watch will stop, leaving you clueless about the time. Most people would wind their watches every morning, making it part of their daily routine like brushing their teeth or going for morning walks. And the coolest part, these watches did not need batteries or charging cables. Just a few twists on the crown, and they'd run for more than 30 hours. Even today, many watch lovers prefer these old school timepieces. They say there's something magical about keeping time the way their grandparents did, and all with a little daily twist of the wrist. The footwear that made the 60s swing. These weren't just shoes, but they were a fashion saga that marched right into everyone's hearts. Shiny white boots that went all the way up to your knees, like something from a space movie. Beautiful, right? However, these weren't made for astronauts, but they were made for dancing. When dancers on TV shows like Shindig started wearing them, every girl in America wanted to grab a pair. But what made them super special? First, they were so comfortable that you could dance all night in these boots, and many people actually did. The most popular ones were bright white, though they came in a variety of other colors too. They looked amazing with the short skirts and dresses of the time, and it was like wearing confidence on your feet. The name go-go came from the French phrase agogo, meaning in abundance, and they were abundant. From high school hallways to dance clubs, these boots were literally seen everywhere. Some had zippers, others had laces, and the fancier ones had buckles. And that's a wrap, guys. If you like the content, please do give it a thumbs up. Comment below on the items you think you would use. Be sure to share this video with your friends and subscribe for more nostalgic journeys through time. Thank you for watching.